Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the all gracious, the all merciful. Hello to you all, dear viewers and dear students of Al-Mustafa Open University. The topic that we were talking about was about the issue of the communications and propagation. If you remember, in our previous discussions, we talked profoundly about the definition, types, and elements of communication, and also about some models of communication profoundly. We talked about near 20 sessions. And if you remember, we started a new episode, which were the techniques of propagation and also techniques of Tabigh. We had some introductory remarks in this regard. Today we are going to be familiar with some of the new techniques of the propagation. One of the techniques which are usually, as a matter of fact, used by the propaganda services all around the world, and we can somehow modify it to use in our particular terms and in our expertise, is the technique of the black and white fallacy. You know, this technique presents only two choices. You know, for example, you have two choices, whether this or that. There is no other option. You have heard about the famous sentence which says that you are either with us or against us, with the imperialists, or you are with the enemy or with us. There is no other choice. So this is the black and white fallacy, or showing that we are white and others are black. These are normally used in the media imperialism and also the somehow American lifestyle, or we can say somehow imperialistic lifestyle, that's showing that this is the best way of life, the best way of living in the world. You know, it is very emotional. You know, we are very beautiful people. We are very common people, you know. Others are others, you know. So this technique from some points are negative, but it has somehow positive points too. You know, negativity of these points refers to this issue that, you know, you look others as black, total black, you know, and this is not according to our Islamic text. You know, this is not well based and well documented idea that, for example, others are bad and we are just good people. If you refer to the seerah of the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, you know, they were always dealing with the others, you know, as their own beliefs. For example, with the Christians, there was no compulsion, there was no forcing people that you have to convert to our religion. There is no other option. At the other way around, Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam always shown the way that, for example, these are different ways of life. Okay, you can choose the best, but if you have chosen the best time, the best way, as a matter of fact, you have to continue that way. Okay, so this technique, which black and white fallacy, of course, I have talked about it in our previous sessions very generally, also has some positive points, which shows to the people, you know, that, for example, you have to be careful about the information around you. You know, it is a kind of informative technique too, in the right position, in the right situation. For example, there are some news on the media, okay, and you see there are two groups of news. Those groups of news which were always having political tendencies, politicizing the news. Okay, this is one kind of news, and the other where they are the real news. In this situation, what is the best choice for the viewer and the person who watches the TV? It is a kind of black and white. If you want to know about the reality of the news, you have to refer to the primary sources. You have to refer to the original sources. For example, if this news refers back to the Shia societies, okay, don't easily rely on the, for example, news which are broadcast by the Wahhabis or the Sunnis. Certainly, they are for example, I have said that by those who are against this idea. Of course, all the Sunnis are not rejecting totally. But those who reject, for example, the Shia denomination totally, they say, Na'uzubillah, it is a kind of shirk, for example. So you cannot rely on those news. You have to refer, if the source of the news are from the Shia societies, so you have to refer to them. Okay? Others are not reliable. Others cannot be referred. They are not good references. So, black and white fallacy, from one hand, is a kind of, we can say, imperialistic way of advertisement, propagation, and tabligh. At the other way around, when it's going to be informative, religiously and culturally, it can come in handy and it can be useful. So how we can use this technique in our propagation? For example, when you go, as a matter of fact, to for example, a country, in order to introduce yourself in a conference, in a session, in a, for example, meeting or in a symposium, okay, you can talk about this technique first of all. Just define this technique and show that, and to tell all the audience that, for example, we religious people in our society are not referring to this technique. This technique by itself can be a reference to show that the religious text, those who are fundamentalists, those who are extremists, okay, who are offering always, for example, they say we are the only way toward the salvation. How about the others? Billions of people are born or die in their beliefs. So what would happen to them? We cannot totally reject all the other ideas. We cannot totally say that others are all wrong. Okay, this is not a good way of judgment. There is one other technique which is somehow related to this black and white fallacy, is the demonizing the enemy. Demonizing the enemy is kind of a technique that refers to making the individuals from the opposing nation, from a different ethnic group, or those who support the opposing viewpoint, appear to be subhuman. For example, in the time of the war of the American soldiers and in the Vietnam, okay, they used to, for example, use these kinds of techniques in that time to show that the other people are not human. They are, for example, some generations of animals, so you have to fight against them. It is a kind of demonizing the other. It is very bad technique which are used in the, for example, Western, and in the Western, by this technique we don't mean, for example, all the Western people. No, it is a kind of technical word. Those who are always taking the reign of the, for example, all the media in their hands, the great corporations, the Six Sisters Corporation of, for example, different, for example, companies, Walt Disney, Hollywood, for example, True Pictures, I don't know, different companies, okay, and the corporations. So HQ Corporation, these are some of them which are, they are feed in order to sometimes demonize the other. Some of them, of course, I don't want to tell all of them. However, we have to be careful that this is one technique that they are, this technique shows, for example, why the fact of Islamophobia nowadays is very comprehensive. Shia phobia, I don't know, Iranophobia, I don't know, Irakophobia, Arabophobia. These are some words, some phrases which has been introduced in order to show to the people that all people, those who want to live in a luxury life, in the emotional way of life, they must refrain from connecting these kinds of people, those who are phobic, for example, those who are, the causes of fear and phobia at the people. This is one of the techniques they use, the terrorist technique. They are always showing that others are terrorists, black and white fallacy. So you are whether with them or with us. Okay, but we have to correct in our missionary jobs. When you talk to young people, to the new generation, for example, to even those who are from elder generation, you have to clarify. One have to clarify who is an Islamic expert, who is an Islamic researcher, who is an Islamic, for example, propagator or muballigh. They have to have a kind of clarification that all people look at the techniques which are used, and we have to be careful in order to modify and moderate these ways of demonizing the others, or showing, for example, there is just only one technique or there is one way of life and the others are wrong, and for example we have to refrain from them. So these two techniques are very near to each other, black and white fallacy or demonizing the other. If you refer to, for example, the Hollywood works, for example, I'm referring to the end of the 20th century and the dawn and the beginning of the 21st century. For example, in 1990s, after the the collapse of the Soviet Union, in that time, if you refer, you would see some very famous movies like Rockies, like Terminator, great stars, top stars of the movies, of the cinema, of the the celebrities, those who have gained very great of importance. You have all heard the name of, for example, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, those who have the heritage of a kind of masochistic, as a matter of fact, techniques of life, showing that, for example, the American soldiers, the American societies, of course I'm talking about that time since it was two polar system in the war, they were always showing that, for example, the American generals, commanders, colonels, they are very powerful, they are very musculous, they have great muscles, they are very athletic, they are very clever, they are so smart, and they by themselves can organize one army, one troop. They can even change the shape of one society. For example, if you refer to the First Blood, which was starred by, for example, Sylvester Stallone, it showed that, for example, all the army one side and this commander who is returning from, for example, the war which was led by the, for example, American politics. So is one part, and this one person is equal to all, and even the winner and the other are failures. So what was the technique in that time in those movies? Demonizing the others, showing that the others are doomed to die. Others must die. There is no other option for them. We have to kill all of them, okay? Because they are against us. They are not with us. They are our enemies. They are not only their enemies, they are demons. Demonizing refers to demon, and demon says that others are devil. They are evil. They are devils. They are not. They are referring to satanic entities and natures. So this technique was very famous in that time, and pinpointing that, for example, in those movies, they were always showing that, for example, the Soviet Union are the enemies. For example, their armies are the enemies, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a new project. And what is that project? That project is the new enemy. They were looking for a new enemy. What is that new enemy? Islam. After the Soviet Union, these imperialistic media are pinpointing on Islam in particular, and in general religiosity. Look at Harry Potter movie, Lord of the Rings, other kinds of movies. These kinds of movies are very superstitious, first of all. And secondly, this is one group of the movies. They are showing that in the 21st century, there is no place for religion. Superstition takes the place of religiosity. This is one important objective and target which these kinds of works are following to reach that target, and they know it will take a long time. And you see, after 15 years, after the turn of the 21st century, we are at 2000, for example, 15. So you see that, or at any time, during 15 years, refer and look at those people who are atheist, the number, and compare it to for example, two decades ago. The number of those who are fleeing and escaping from religiosity are rising and going up. Why? Because of these kinds of technique, demonizing the other. The new enemy in the 21st century is religion, Islam. I don't know, Arabs. Unfortunately, you see in some of the movies, they say the good Muslim is a dead Muslim. Unfortunately, it's very sad to say. A good Arab is a dead Arab. And there are some other sentences that I cannot say, tell them here. However, what is this? It is the result of the demonizing the other. We have to, in our propagations, in our tablighs, we have to correct this idea. We have to inform the people. We have to tell to all the young generation, to all the elder generations, that be careful. If you want to know what are the imperialistic media and imperialistic lecturers, imperialistic universities are doing, is this. First of all, talking about demonizing the other. Secondly, talking about black and white fallacy. And after that, when you are white, you are beautiful people. The others are black people. They are black, of course, we mean by for example, comparing to, being with you or against you, those who are rightful or not the black by the skin. No, I'm not talking about that. When you are right and the others are bad, so you are encouraged to fight against them, to attack them, to be offensive, and etc. So today I talked about two other techniques. I hope that these were beneficial. And in the upcoming sessions, God willing, I will talk about some other techniques. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.